Hi, everyone. My name is Ehab Bandar, talking to you today from Oakland, California. And I'm talking to you today about product discovery, an area that I'm super excited about. Um, why does product discovery matter? I'll be sharing some of its evolution, where we're at today, and I'll be sharing some tips and principles that your team can apply to build better products and do product discovery in a better way. So, without further ado, let me share my screen. So a little bit about me. I'm founder of Bigtable. We're an experienced, focused digital consultancy, focused really around design thinking, agile, and product discovery. So what is product discovery? Let me just back up a little bit and talk about sort of what is software development in general and what's the goal of software development. And really, for me, it boils down to finding and building products that customers will love as soon as possible. So this goes hand in hand with product discovery and product delivery. Really, the distinction between product discovery and delivery, while they happen very often simultaneously, is that product discovery is really looking to find the product to build, what to build, through customer interviews, through market fit, through opportunity evaluations, and experimentation, while as product delivery is looking to build that thing as fast, as quickly as possible, and as high quality as possible. At the end of the day, we're both phases are involved in the creation process. And as Michael Cusimano so aptly puts it, we're in the invention game. We are building tools, applications that meet a certain job of the customer. So the evolution of discovery is really an evolution of learning. It's really the evolution from static to dynamic, from fixed to organic, from a viable product to a product that we all love. And there's a bunch of humility in it, going from we know everything to we're not sure, let's test it out. So that in a nutshell is sort of product discovery. Very quickly, I'm going to talk about the sort of the origins of discovery. We have to talk about waterfall, which is sort of the most idealistic and simplistic approach, which is the way manufacturing and legacy software was built. And until the 1980s, that was the primary method for building applications. Even as late as the launch of Windows 95, it was strictly a waterfall process where you have very discrete phases, you have a single big release, and often discovery and design precedes everything else and is done at the earliest point and not done afterwards. But then over time, we see a different approach to that, a sort of some alternatives to that waterfall method. And in 1985, Tom Gelb, a computer scientist, introduced the idea of an evolutionary delivery. And here you can see hints of the agile, where you have build, measure, feedback loop built in. And this was really an evolution of the incremental delivery practice that was being preached, but still not quite adopted in its current form. So this was sort of the first attempt at countering the waterfall sort of iterative step-by-step model into a much more of a sort of an organic incremental approach. Then in the 1990s, a lot of people started rethinking waterfall in a more serious way. The idealism of waterfall kind of was hitting against a lot of product fails and the reality of a complex environment that software operates in. So the main things that it ran up across was that users rarely knew what they wanted. So you would ask them, they would tell you one thing, but it wasn't the full picture. And then even during implementation, the requirements would often change, or you'd uncover new requirements that you didn't anticipate in the beginning. And then the reality of any project, any complex project with a lot of unknowns, there are a lot of factors that lead to changing requirements. So we saw quite a bit of rethinking. This was sort of best expressed in the extreme programming of Kent Beck, where he introduced this idea of accountability for programmers, making sure that they can build functional programs in a shorter amount of time. A really almost like a proof of concept. And here you see elements of Agile in the approach of 3-week increments, user stories, acceptance criteria, and really test-driven development, ensuring that what gets built can be tested in front of users. And here we see kind of the surest signs that while it didn't explicitly talk about discovery, there was quite a bit of discovery in these 3-week increments that would result in changes to the plan, to the original plan that was conceived. Again, still it's in its infancy, but there was among programmers, at least, there was a bit of humility, and I think it's best expressed in this Kent Beck quote, which states that optimism is an occupational hazard of programming. Feedback is the treatment. So this was a very big step forward in the humility quotient that I like to talk about, in that we don't know what we don't know. And then in 2001, about 17 of the leading computer scientists and thought leaders really had a sort of a coming of the minds, and really a call to action against waterfall. It was a very strong statement in the Agile Manifesto, expressing very simple but very ideals that now we take for granted, which is you value people over process. You have working software as the ultimate metric. And most importantly, for the product discovery realm that we're talking about, it's the emphasis on customer collaboration and the agility to respond to changing feedback. So this was a very key milestone in 2001. At the same time, we have a more of a design-driven, more of a user-centered driven methodology, and best embodied in the design thinking that was popularized by IDEO and Apple, where they start with the empathy and really try to walk in the customer's shoes, try to understand their needs, and go from there to building prototypes and prioritizing their needs, and really testing out concepts through that different lens where you're trying to come up with requirements from the inside rather than from the outside in. But it was still a kind of a rough outline of how you approach discovery. It wasn't systematic. It wasn't quantitative. It was very much heuristic. And as I've noted here, heuristic from the root word heuriskein is a really means to discover, and it's an effort to come up with what people do need, and this is sort of a loose framework for that effort. And then in 2008, a consultant by the name of Tony Ulwick really tried to systemize the discovery process through a framework that he called jobs to be done. And this really goes back to translating needs into jobs that you can fulfill, you can prioritize, you can estimate their satisfaction level and the importance level of those jobs that people want to accomplish. One of the revelations in this is that there was a greater emphasis on talking with the customer and really systemizing the analysis and design of the product strategy based on those jobs to be done. So this was a big step forward that really kind of tried to create a system that can be easily followed with enough research. And then in 2011 came Eric Ries and his lean startup. So borrowing a lot of the discovery methods and the approach of manufacturing and even construction management, this idea of learn, build, and revise based on that feedback. It was one of the key sort of messages was to really go for the minimum viable product, to do just enough to get that feedback, to get that validation, to take the next step forward. So this was a big kind of concept that a lot of people gravitated towards, and that Discovery was trying to pursue. And the general approach was a very scientific-based, hypothesis-based approach to evaluating ideas and either dismissing them or doubling down and going forward with those ideas. One of the other big kind of benefits of this approach was this idea of startups being a learning machine, that we're in the business of learning to innovate, to take that next step. So this was a very key milestone in terms of how both the strategy, the discovery, and the delivery would happen in unison. And the other part of Lean was this very tacit understanding that we don't know what we don't know, and that the problems are really unknown, and that the way to get there is through discovery and delivery of that MVP to get real customer feedback in the real world. And then finally, in 2016, we see the introduction of design sprints by Jake Knapp at Google X. And this was really trying to meld both the language of engineering and sprints and time boxing with the language of design and prototyping and collaboration. And it was also another reflection of designers feeling sort of left out of the process, of researchers feeling left out of the process. And it was a systematic way to get designers to design, to get collaborators to collaborate in a very time-boxed way. And most importantly, at the end of the process, to come up with a prototype that they could actually validate with real people based on their collaboration for that previous 5 days of collaboration. So this was a great tool for sort of rapid prototyping. It was used for Google Glass. It was used for a bunch of different efforts to really get quick feedback to get to that MVP effort. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the history of product discovery. As you can see here, they're all fads. They're trends that peak and go away. Extreme programming had its heyday in 2005. You have Lean Startup nowadays, but I think the winner by far, and so if we add design thinking to the mix, it definitely tops the mind share quotient and is still very prevalent today around the discovery approach. So in a nutshell, you could really talk about discovery as iteration, 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 do over, do over, do over, until you find that product that you want to build. It's also important to kind of keep in mind some principles, because methods do change. The principles, I think, are the things that can drive a lot of teams to pick and choose which method works for them, and which approach would work for them based on their type of project and their type of need. So the first principle I want to talk about is probably my favorite one. So there's a concept in economics called revealed versus stated preference. It's the idea that people never know what they really want, and what they tell you they want is often not what they want. So I think it's best captured in this quote by Jeff Bezos when he says that no customer ever asked for Prime membership program, but it turns out that they really wanted it. And the reveal preference happens through actually putting it out to the world. And this is why I really like continuous delivery and progressive delivery, is you can find these nuggets of gems that work, that don't work, through actual feedback from real usage. The second principle, which we just hinted at, is this idea of prototyping to de-risk your idea, and to really show either investors, stakeholders, leadership of where you're heading and where you're thinking. So in this example, this picture here shows Tesla's Roadster first generation. So before it was even production ready, you can see in the top right what they call their test mule. is really a Frankenstein of car parts, just to make it work, just to convey the idea of what they're going after. And this eventually led them to another big round of funding to get that next step. But it also built a lot of energy and excitement. And for a lot of teams, this kind of effort, this kind of validation will keep them going. So this is another important lesson for discovery, is you want those small wins that keep you going, that keep you part of that mission, that bigger mission that you're there for, to try to uncover those innovations. Principle number 3 is really about creating that sort of that vision, that big problem that you're trying to solve. In the jobs to be done framework, there's really 2 types of discoveries. The first is understanding what the market opportunity is, what that problem you're trying to solve. And the second part of discovery is what that product will look like. And this principle is really talking about that first piece, identifying what that mission is, what that opportunity is, what the problem that you're trying to solve, to help align the team in the right direction, so you're not constantly weaving and turning to try to get to your destination. So everybody's on the same page. Everyone has the same very concrete goal that they're after. This principle, I almost call the slide test, test, and retest. And it really speaks to the really evidence-based research that we have around more testing, more modeling, more prototyping generates better ideas. And in this research, Ethan Malik did a research of Bing.com, their A/B testing, and uncovered that the top 2% of the ideas were responsible for almost 75% of the gains. And this really goes to show you, in a very quantitative way, the need to generate more ideas, more prototyping, more research up front, to really identify what those gems are, so that you're tackling the right products and not wasting people's time and energy on things that aren't going to give you that value to the end user. And number 5, so Palantir has this concept of forward deployed engineers. So they don't have a sales team. They really have engineers that are forwardly deployed with the customer to really live and breathe what what their workday is like. And this really helps uncover those needs from the inside out rather than the outside in. And every discovery, modern product discovery, it's all about being in constant contact with the customer, never losing sight of that, and making sure your teams are also in constant contact with the customer to really understand the nuances. So not just preaching empathy, but really, really practicing empathy and really living in their shoes and understanding their needs day to day. Number 6 is one of my favorites. If you're a Nassim Taleb fan, you'll appreciate Skin in the Game. But you really want to focus on a cross-functional team as part of your discovery that really has a vested interest in the outcome of what they're working on, and is incentivized in the right way. So this Ghostbusters team, if you're familiar with the movie, if they do their job right, they will get rewarded and get more business. If they don't do their job right, they will get slimed, if you're familiar with that movie. And so they have an incentive to do well, to be creative, to understand the market, to understand what their job is. And so this is kind of the principle of skin in the game, cross-functionality, really goes a long way when you're trying to uncover needs and customer needs and trying to do the best job possible. And the last few principles are really a mindset culture that we try to instill, and it's especially relevant in product discovery, which is a very creative process, and to assemble a curiosity mindset, not just to preach, it's okay to fail. It goes beyond preaching. It really, you want team members who have this sort of continuous learning mindset, who can grind it out because there's a lot of grind, who believe in the mission, and who are curious about um, uncovering gems, insights about the customers. And this is not a common trait, unfortunately. But as Gusto, Gusto is just an amazing company for this sort of curiosity. And their co-founder was quoted as saying, "Celebrate what you don't know." And this is really a cultural aspect that I think can go a long way to help product discovery. And principle number 8 is really to keep in mind some of the earlier stuff about the North Star, the vision, is to really work towards what you're after and not to optimize for the short-term gains. This again, starts at the top, but it really, is a way to reorient towards what's really important for the project, and not to just to optimize on speed and releases and shipping, but to really work through some of the hard problems to get to that longer term vision that we're after in discovery. And principle 9 is something that we quickly lose sight, especially when we're trying to figure out what the right feature sets are and what the right user stories are. It's really emphasizing experience, anticipating what the customer needs are in the future, and really optimizing on delight. There's a recent quote by Tony Fadell, who was the creator of iPod, helped and created Nest, and was a big part of the iPhone project. He was very upfront, and he was very candid that said they were anticipating, they knew that customers wanted 1,000 songs in their pockets, but then they realized that customers wanted everything in their pocket. And then rather than try to look away, they realized that to cannibalize themselves, or somebody else is going to cannibalize them. And so the iPhone, the genesis of the iPhone came to be, and that's what accelerated its development at that point. And last but not least is principle 10, which is really an aggregation of all the principles. It's really to apply those principles into your organization. As Ralph Waldo Emerson well adequately states it, he says, "As to methods, there may be a million and then some, but principles are few. The man who grasps principles can successfully select his own methods." And this goes back to that methods and toolkits come and go, but what's really important is following the principles that work well with your organization. Some of the best companies that do that are like Amazon, who have their 14 principles that every decision has to be aligned with. And I think this goes a long way to building that sort of discovery innovation mindset that a lot of teams are looking for. So just to summarize where we're at with product discovery, we've moved from a sort of a static model to more of a continuous model, both in the discovery side and the delivery side. And it's a very exciting time in that learning is central to both the discovery and the delivery to constantly keep making products better and better. So with that, I thank you for your time. I appreciate your listening to me. Thank you so much.